Hello. So I'm sitting in my car in the cursed parking lot yet again. And I'm gonna finally make the video that I've been afraid to make for a very long time because I could talk about this topic for 50 years and still not be done. It's essentially just this whole thing now. It's like a trope. It's a popular thing to make videos about. There's a white woman next to me. That's great. It's essentially just the whole thing of female rage. And who's allowed to feel it and who's allowed to be a victim to rage and how it's handled differently between when you're like a white person and when you're a person of color. I want to preface this whole video essentially by saying that it is going to contain, me talking about sexual violence, like trauma, intergenerational issues and anger and stress, essentially everything that YouTube likes to demonetize. So I just want to let you know, in case you don't want to watch a video about those things, or you just can't right now, like go watch a different video. I support you. Go watch your little cooking video. I want that for you. But if you stuck around, this is going to accidentally turn into Love Lies Bleeding Part 3 in the first 5 seconds. So sorry about that. The reason I wanted to make this video is because actually when I was sitting in the theater for Love Lies Bleeding, which is, in case you don't know, a lesbian film that's essentially about female rage, but they aren't marketing it like that, and people aren't talking about it like that, which I think is very interesting, because the character is not considered to be traditionally feminine. So of course they're like, oh no, we can't ascribe these valid emotions of anger to like this like big buff woman who is also mixed race. Like, so I don't know, I have feelings about that, which I'm about to go into. So I'm in the theater. I'm watching this movie. I'm amazed. I love it so much. And then comes the part where, spoilers, one of the main characters, Jackie, does kill somebody who's an abuser. And honestly, I was in the theater clapping. I was like, ah, like I was so happy that happened because that man was a freak. So she kills this abuser, and her girlfriend goes to look for her because her girlfriend had no idea what was going on. It's Kristen Stewart secretly, by the way. And she's like, where the hell, what is happening? She goes and finds Jackie. Jackie's sitting in the bathtub, visibly very distressed, like completely out of her mind, like upset, like was definitely crying, like just looks like a completely different person at that point because she's really not in it. And the girlfriend is like, what happened? Like, did you do that? Did you kill, this man who is essentially my brother-in-law? He's like, the guy who's like beating up my sister. And all she says is, I made it right. And some jackass in the theater behind me turns to his friend and goes, badass bitch. Like literally, like very audibly whispers. And I'm just sitting there like she's very clearly traumatized in this moment. Like she literally, by killing this man, she was reliving her trauma of every single man who's ever tried to, or actively like abused me, hurt me, done all these things to me. So I killed him, and kind of by proxy killing every other man who's ever like done me wrong. And I did it also for the sister, because at that point the sister was fully in the hospital. Like she'd almost been half beaten to death. It was horrible. Like the entire side of her face was disfigured because he like slammed her face into the wall so hard. Like it was really bad. So that was the part in the movie, and it pissed me off really badly because in my opinion that scene was less about her rage and her like monstrous form that she takes whenever she feels threatened by, people in the world who are trying to kill her, who are trying to hurt her. And I was like, oh my God, like I really understand the thing of, I got so angry and like I did what I felt like I had to do to protect myself. But then 5 seconds later, you're kind of just sitting in the reality of what you've done. And you're like, holy shit, like obviously I have never killed an abuser, unfortunately. But I've definitely been in that thing where it's like, I've been in abusive relationships and people, my girlfriends, have gone after me, and I've had to very swiftly be like, you need to stay away from me right now. And like I scared the shit out of them because I was like, I didn't physically do anything, but I was like, get away from me. And I think they weren't used to like me standing up to them, I guess, so they'd be like, okay. And then later feeling like a fucking monster for like lashing out or raising my voice to be like, you need to stay away from me. Like I don't know, that's a whole, I could probably talk more about that, but it's like, once again, it's already 4 minutes in and I am feeling that this is going to be a long video. So it just amazed me, not in a good way, like the perspective of being a man and seeing this perceived female rage and the direct aftermath of it and saying like, oh, badass bitch. Like, it's like an action movie star who just like blew up a building and is walking away in slow motion. It's like, no, this woman just tried to defend another woman and herself from this man and ended up killing him in a very brutal way. And now she's dealing with the mental repercussions of like, oh my God, I fucking killed somebody. And then as far as I'm concerned, the rest of the movie, she's just out of it because A, she's hopped up on steroids and becoming buff and beautiful. And then B, she's actually overusing steroids and essentially abusing drugs because she cannot deal with the reality of what she's done. And like the reality of like what the female rage inside of her like has produced, because she just keeps killing throughout the movie. And like, it's just, I think it's a really, there's so many ways you can take that movie and so many different studies that you could do. Like even just thinking about it, talking about whatever, about like different aspects of it. And once again, in my opinion, it is very much a movie that could be very soundly classified under the category of these films that are coming out now as female rage. Where you have these very, you know, like standard is it's a white woman who gets sexually assaulted and then she becomes a badass and does all this like stuff and gets her revenge. And at the end of the movie, she has a new boyfriend and she's wearing a leather jacket and she's wearing sunglasses and she walks off into the sunset and is like one of the guys now because she's reclaimed her like herself from like the weakness of femininity. Like, it's crazy. Like, I really don't like watching those movies because it makes it seem, I'm like going out of order of the stupid outline I did, but whatever. It makes it seem like rape is something you can overcome by shedding the version of yourself that was a weak woman. And now nobody will hurt you again because you will never be so naive and you carry a gun and all this stuff. And it's like all the aesthetic of not even rape recovery, but like the transformation of like, oh, well, like I'm a better person because of it. It's like, it's definitely not like that in my personal experience and the other experiences of people I've talked to. Like, maybe it is for some people. I don't want to speak for, you know, people who are also like victims, and I hate saying survivors because it's almost, it just sounds so like, to me personally, it sounds like one word on the list of platitudes that we're calling things now, where it's like, yeah, you survived the rape, but it's also like, what, you make it sound like it's a bear attack or something. Like, you make it sound like it's a car crash. Like, no, somebody made a conscious decision to hurt you and you have to live through that for the rest of your life, whether you think about it all the time like I do, or you're just like, it's a thing that happened and you're trying to cope by like moving through your life in a way that avoids it completely. Like, either way, like you're just getting through it. Like, you're trying to live your life like after this like honestly cataclysmic event that just happened to you. And I think it's, I don't know, I just think the verbiage around a lot of these I don't know, like narratives about sexual assault is very uncomfortable for me personally, because also I just, so much of it is based in, oh, you are a feminine woman, so you qualify as a victim, especially a feminine white woman, because I have a whole other paragraph in here about like the way that very particularly Black and Latino women are not seen as actual victims ever, because it's like, oh, you're so like exotic and like you're just always naturally angry, which is an invitation for people to like put you in your place. Like, it's crazy. It's all I'll get into that in a second. But essentially, I just don't like these narratives that are showing an inaccurate portrayal of you know, like female rage as a tool to elevate yourself to the status of like a cis man in society, like especially a white cis man. It just makes me really uncomfortable to see, especially as somebody who, once again, is somebody who has been through like several different instances of sexual assault, like rape at the hands of like, you know, like romantic partners. Like, it's just like a whole thing. So that makes me really just like, I could lose my mind over it forever. Okay, let me go back to this magic outline. And another thing I did want to bring up, which I feel like is obvious if you're on my channel, you kind of tacitly probably understand this, but I just, in case you're a random person and you're finding my videos and you're like, oh, let's just figure it out. This, when I talk about female rage and I talk about things that are specifically like, oh, like women's issues or whatever, I of course am including trans women in this, and especially in the way that like sexual violence towards trans women is such a specific and insidious occurrence that is so common and so almost parodied at this point that it's like it just never gets taken seriously. And the second that, this is also a very specific thing, I'm sure the second that a trans woman would be in that narrative where she's getting really angry because she's been sexually assaulted, unfortunately, like in a plot or in a movie or a book or something, people automatically be like, oh yeah, the man in her is coming out and now she's like acting on her male urges for violence. And it's like, I invite you to shut the fuck up and never speak again, because that is absolutely not what that is about. Like, that is not the point. Like, once again, like, it is so common for, like, trans women to get sexually assaulted, unfortunately, because of their status as, like, trans women in society and not being seen as real women, but also being degraded in the same way that, a very similar way, at least. I say similar because, like, obviously, like, there's a lot of nuance to the violence that trans women experience that cis women don't even experience. And it's not saying, oh, one is more severe than the other, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, but it is very specific. Like, it's very, for example, like, if you get assaulted as a cis woman, there's at least somewhat of more of a chance that you will either get A, taken seriously, and then B, like, not just laughed out of, you know, a precinct where the police will be like, oh, well, you were probably a sex worker, so, like, if you're a trans woman, like, oh, well, you were probably like a sex worker and you were asking for it and all this stuff. So like, you're just like a freak of society, essentially. So like, get the fuck out of here. You're lucky we don't assault you. Like, just crazy shit like that. It's just, I don't know. That part is very upsetting. So I just want to put that in there because it's like, I don't like this whole thing of like, I don't know, gatekeeping womanhood. I think it's very strange. And like, I know there are like very big differences and specific experiences that maybe like, you know, like trans women will not experience this, cis women will not experience that. But at the same time, like the big attempt to be incredibly divisive between, you know, two groups of people who are ultimately seen as like under the same umbrella, it's just not, I don't know, that gets to me. But time to get to the part where I scream about Rihanna. 1 second. It sounds funny, but it's actually very serious. So we covered a lot of whatever I just said 5 minutes ago. So there's that. The other thing I want to talk about mainly is the fact of, oh, who gets to be a victim? So there's so much anger baked into the stereotypes of women of color, very specifically, like I mentioned before, Black and Latino women. And it really freaks me out. And it makes me really upset for various reasons. And here are the reasons. So with Black women, they're seen as inherently violent, rude, ignorant, you know, not real women, all this stuff. And it's like kind of terrifying how people use this against Black women 24/7 in the way of, oh, like something bad happened to you, it must have been your fault. You must have done something, like, you know, like if you were being too wild, too angry, too whatever. It's like, yeah, you're going to react angrily if somebody is saying racist things to you, somebody's treating you like shit, somebody's literally trying to beat you up, you know. Like, why would you react in any other way other than being afraid and being pissed off that this is happening to you? And it's used so often as an excuse of, oh yeah, this like, you know, this Black woman got sexually assaulted. Like, oh, well, like, it's her fault because she looks a certain way. Like, she, once again, her body, like, oh, she's so exotic and beautiful. Like, no wonder this man could not help himself. Like, very much like going back to the days of slavery, like the Jezebel, you know, stereotype of, oh, women, Black women particularly, are so promiscuous and like, you know, they're just tempting all of their white masters with like their faces and their bodies. It's like, and it never died. People still use that stuff as an excuse to harass Black women all the time. It's like really disheartening to see. I brought up Rihanna because this is the part of the video I was actually kind of scared to make because it's something I get very emotional over. I know that crimes get sensationalized on TV constantly. It's just part of the news cycle. Even in the 90s and the early 2000s, it's just something that happens. People will take the worst things on the planet and make it into a news story and sell it. Like, I get it. A news story I distinctly remember happening when I was like a very little kid. Like, I feel like I was very, very young. Was the incident between Rihanna and Chris Brown. for a lot of people on the internet and a lot of people in general, they have forgotten. They don't really think about it. They're like, oh, she's just like a makeup mogul. Like, she's just like, you know, she's married to A$AP Rocky, or I guess they're not married, but they're together, and I'm happy for them. The big thing with that is I remember a time when she was on the news and she was everywhere because Chris Brown beat her up almost to the point of killing her. And I saw that as a child, and I was very confused because in my mind, Rihanna was this beautiful singer. Like, she's so cool. She's like an older, I was like literally maybe 4 years old, 5 years old, maybe 6. You know, like, so to me, I was like, oh, she's such a cool older girl. Like, that's awesome. Like, I love her so much. I love her music. It plays everywhere. It's in the grocery store. It's, you know, on literally like Radio Disney. They would play SOS, and they'd play, what is it? I'm me old. Please don't stop the music. Like, I remember it. So I remember her very fondly being like this really cool, amazing singer. And then I saw on the news pictures of her and Chris Brown fighting in a car. And I later saw pictures that TMZ bribed EMTs to give to them. Like, all the medical staff are getting paid off in LA especially by TMZ, and that's how they get all those like gruesome photos of celebrities after car crashes or whatever. But that aside, I remember seeing that photo of Rihanna and being horrified because I couldn't imagine somebody so beautiful, so cool, whatever. She's like a musician, she's famous, she's really successful, getting beaten like that. It's imprinted in my mind. Like, I could close my eyes and see it. Like, it's so bad. And I remember the news vilifying her and saying that she's so angry and volatile and all these things. And like, she was fighting him and she hit him first. So like, she deserves everything she got. And I like didn't even know what to do with it. Cause once again, I was so young, but like in my mind, the question formed, oh, what did she do to deserve it? And I feel like ever since, I've heard of really, you know, you always hear it, violent crimes against women, like femicide is a very serious, like disgusting thing that largely affects women of color, especially in domestic relationships. And it's just something that sticks with me still. And I know everyone's like over it and it was yesterday's news. I'm like, oh, I didn't even realize that happened. Like, so many people say that to me when it comes up sometimes. And I'm like, that was such a informative part of my life that I've had to unlearn, where it's, oh, a woman of color, particularly once again, like Black or Latino women, get hurt. And I'm like, oh, they must have done something because they all have like tempers. Like, oh, they're so angry. And it's like, that's of it. Like, it's just not true. And also, even not for nothing, like, side note, if your personality is like, oh, you just get mad sometimes, like, oh, like, you get loud, whatever, like, that shouldn't be a reason for you to get assaulted. Or like to get, you know, just anything. Like, you don't deserve that happening to you. And it makes me really sick that it's such a common narrative. And I know people are saying things are different and changing, but honestly, in day-to-day life, and, you know, I don't live in the utopia that is Brooklyn. Like, I don't live in a big city where everyone's kind of trying to be like performatively progressive at the very least. Like, I live in the middle of bumfuck New Jersey. Like, I do. I admit it. Like, I live in a weird kind of semi-rural small town area. Like, people are saying crazy shit to me all the time. Not even just personally, but like, people are saying like random, just offhand comments of like, just an example. I'll be hanging out with somebody. I'll be at the store or something. We're at the grocery checkout. And like, for example, you know, there'll be like a Black woman or something in front of me. And she'll be like, oh, I forgot my purse in the car. Like, damn. And then like, she'll walk out to get her purse. And then the cashier will make a comment about her being, you know, like loud or stupid or like anything. And I'm just sitting there like, oh, like maybe like that's just regular person behavior. And if a white woman did that, it would just be like, haha, yeah, Kathy forgot her purse. Like, haha. But since it's like a woman of color, suddenly her having like 5 seconds of like, is like, you know, incentive enough to be like, oh, well, like what if she comes back here and she starts swinging on all of us? Like, I feel like I'm in danger. And it's like, dude, like, come on. And I don't know, that ties into the whole thing of like, once again, like this concept of female rage. It's like, who's even considered a female? Like, literally, like, I have it in my notes, like, even with people like Michelle Obama, Serena Williams, like wealthy, powerful women, like they're getting treated like disgusting by the media. And I'm sure even in their everyday lives, it's like they could have all the money and fame in the world and they're still getting treated like, you know, the average black woman on the street. I remember seeing all of those cartoons, they were disgusting. They were like political comics or whatever about sports matches where Serena would be like, you know, clearly getting upset because like it was true. The referees were being pieces of shit to her. Like, obviously, it's just not, it's a thing that happens all the time to her. She would be drawn as like a caricature of a man. Or people would look at her and like weirdly, this is like a separate video that I feel like I shouldn't even make because it's not my place to go into it because I don't have the personal experience. But this whole thing of like a way of degrading or, you know, humbling, you know, a cis black woman is to compare her to a man and be like, oh, you're such a big, scary, angry man. Like, you're acting so unfeminine, all this other stuff. And it's like, why are we like being transphobic to a cis woman? And then also once we finally, you know, move on to being transphobic to an actual trans woman, it's like obvious, like it's even like more brutal, but it's just like, why is that such a common insult to pull out as like a knee-jerk reaction? It's like so bizarre. And it's like, are black women not allowed to be angry in general for everything they've been through collectively and like their everyday lives where like people are like being crazy to them? Like totally, like, why is this not acceptable for them? Why, like, you know, I've seen maybe a handful, maybe one or two movies where it is starring like a black character, black woman particularly, who has been wronged and she's getting justice for herself and it's like a whole thing. But it's like, even that is like portrayed in a very specific way of like, it's almost holding back because like the producers or the directors or whatever are afraid of invoking this stereotype. But it's also like why, like, if anybody's allowed to be angry, I would say black women are allowed to be angry. Like, come on, like, what is that? The other part of it that I hate to even get into, but it's like important to me to talk about for this topic particularly, is this whole thing of sexualizing anger in regards to Latina women. It really freaks me out because I don't like the fact that somebody getting angry and people are like, oh, she's just being spicy, she's doing this, she's doing that, is somehow an invitation for sexual assault. And I've seen it so much as a common trope in like porn and like, I don't know, like just like plot line after plot line of sexualizing people who are working as maids, or they're working in the back of a restaurant, or they're doing whatever. They're like having like a working class job. And oftentimes this woman usually cannot really speak English. And it's always a white guy who comes in and starts antagonizing this woman to the point that she's like, I'm now pissed off at you. And then it's an invitation for sexual assault. And it's like a very linear plot line that I've seen over and over and over again. And I cannot watch it. Like, I can't watch that stuff. It makes me so upset for, like, you know, obvious reasons. Like, the porn industry just isn't, it's not wonderful for a lot of women. But it's just very particularly, like, it scares me because I feel that it carries into real life. And I know it's like, oh, like, adult entertainment, like whether it's just photo sets or it's like, you know, magazines. I know that's very old school to buy like a dirty magazine, but it's like magazines or, you know, like things you're seeing online, like, and not things that are independently created by like women who are like on OnlyFans or they own their own businesses and they're like, you know, running their own production company, whatever. I'm talking you're like in the big production company and it's in your contract or it's part of your like rite of passage essentially to do this racialized porn so that you can get into the industry. It makes me like, I just have so many feelings about the fact that it, like, it's maybe, I know it's not the point, but it's like fantasy and reality are, you know, naturally they're completely separate things. I know it's very much in the vein of, oh, you play Call of Duty, it's not like you're gonna go shoot up a school or something. Like, it is not, sometimes it is, but for the most part it's not a direct A leads to B. Like, obviously there's other factors going on and like you can't literally go after video game creators for like making like a shooting game and then somebody shoots somebody. But that's also kind of not a great comparison, because I would argue that you could go after a lot of these people in the porn industry at the upper levels for encouraging this type of content and like allowing it to be produced, and like, you know, because you know you're gonna make big bucks, because people love to sexualize women of color in a very specific, degrading way. And it really I'm not smiling because I'm happy. It upsets me because, not for nothing, I grew up in a town where a lot of the people of color were predominantly like Latino. So a lot of the times the friends I'd have at school, friends, like, I don't know, like I was a loser, and then their mom would invite me over to their house for like dinner, and I'd be like, yay, actual dinner, like whatever. So stuff like that. A lot of these women I knew were working women. They were maids. They would clean offices. Like, it was their thing. And like, they didn't, like, English was their second language. So they're exactly like these women in these videos who are being brutalized. But the thing is, like, sometimes, you know, they would mention, like, yeah, it was a really tough day at work. This guy is giving me trouble. Like, he's being really weird to me. Like, I don't like it. Like, but it's fine because I got you all McDonald's for dinner, so it's cool. And it's like, dude, I can like only conceptualize, only imagine like the things that they have to go through every single day. And the ideas that these disgusting men get from like watching, you know, consuming this content where like you think it's so far off from the real world that they're not gonna, you know, do anything scary or like be crazy. But like, genuinely, I feel like, how do I put it? The videos you're consuming, or the images you're consuming, like, it does something to your brain, to the point that like, if it's something that you've seen so many times, it almost becomes normalized. And I'm sure there's actual studies on this by people smarter than I am, who have done like full on research about the way that porn affects real life and relationships, because it does. Like, even for example, like, this is a side note, but like, this whole theme of choking becoming more normal, which sounds like a joke because it's like, oh, choking, whatever, it doesn't matter, like, it's so common. But like, this thing of choking where people are choking out their partners without even asking, because they think it's just a normal part of sex, because they saw it on a few videos and the girl in the video was really into it, so I thought you'd be into it. Like, shit like that. It sounds, you know, it happened in Euphoria. And once again, I know it's supposed to just be like, oh, it's just part of Euphoria, it's just a plot line. But it's like, that happens in real life. So the thing is, I really do think that these like ooky spooky white men take out their weird sexual like aggression and fantasies that they've seen in, you know, these videos onto these real life women of color. And people are like, oh no, it's their outlet. If they watch the violent porn, it's just their outlet and they won't do it in real life. And I'm like, why do you even have to like find a way to like have an outlet and restrain yourself in regards to like sexually abusing women of color? Like, and I say this 24/7. The theme of my videos is me saying it's a separate thing. It's all related, but it's like, it's separate in the way that I would like to make a video about this topic that is like more in depth, where Asian women and I would say Native women are like hypersexualized in a very like disgusting and brutal way. But the thing is, it's in a very different way than, you know, our like Black and Latina counterparts. And when I say Latina, I know there's white Latinas out there who get treated like they're white people, honestly. Like, that's a completely separate thing. I'm thinking of like women who are like brown skinned and or like Black and Latina who are being treated in this very specific way. Because it is like, it's like a skin tone thing and like a facial features thing. Like, where if you have more ethnic features, you get treated worse. Like, it's a whole thing. But I don't know, like, Asian women deal with a lot of stuff, and we get treated almost in the opposite way, where it's like, oh, you're not aggressive or loud or whatever, you're subservient and you're quiet and you're essentially just like a sex robot who is also a domestic laborer, who is also like, I don't know, just better seen than heard. Like, you just don't exist unless I want you to exist, kind of thing. You don't feel an emotion unless I want you to feel an emotion. You don't have, you know, you don't have your own sexual agency unless I tell you to, because you're doing something that I want you to do. Like, it's still a form of control and degradation, but it's like almost on the separate side of like the spectrum of like how we're treating women of color. It's like really crazy. But and I mentioned Native women because like something that I've done a lot of research into, and something that I like really upsets me, and it's like a whole thing that there's so many other better videos and so many other educated people than me who can actually speak about it. The whole situation of missing and murdered Indigenous women it's just like it's horrific. It's horrifying. It should not be happening. And I like the whole stereotype of like promiscuity and like, oh, she must have deserved it because she tried to go out and party and she left her kid at her relative's house, and you know, like they're just so wild and crazy. They go missing all the time, and they're probably not even missing. They're just doing drugs with their new boyfriend, like shit like that. And then it's like, dude, like, what do you? Could you do something? Like, this woman's clearly missing, and she's probably dead by now because you didn't even go to try to find her because you put this stereotype on her. And the thing is, it's almost disturbing that people are like, oh, like it's missing and murdered Indigenous women. It's like so many of these women are little girls. They're teenagers. Like they're literally like young teenagers who were walking home one day and suddenly they vanished, and now it doesn't even matter that they're gone, and their parents are like going crazy and the cops are doing nothing. But that's, once again, that's a whole separate thing. I just get really invested in the way that women of color are seen and particularly treated, like not even in comparison, because honestly, like I've said white women in this video maybe more time than I've said white women the entire last 6 years. I've stopped fixating on white people, and now I'm just thinking about like issues that particularly involve people of color. But I'm getting completely off track, but it's all related, I promise. It will all make sense. So all of these stereotypes involving anger essentially make it so the anger of women of color never gets taken seriously. And I keep repeating it, but I'm like very serious about the fact that like these things are very specific to Black women and like Latino women. Like this stereotype of fetishized anger, so that the anger never gets taken seriously and maybe is even, you know, seen as an invitation for sexual assault. It really disgusts me. So the thing is, how does that fit into this whole narrative of like, you know, female rage? The thing is, like, white women being angry is supposed to be this big revolutionary thing, because it's like, oh, we're always taught to be nice and be quiet and like, you know, be chill. Like, so us being angry is so like rare, and like it must mean I deserve a movie where I wear a leather jacket and Taylor Swift songs play in the background, like Bad Blood is playing in the background, and like I'm like doing all this like cocky shit that like action movie, you know, male counterparts would be doing, and I have a toothpick hanging out my mouth, and like I'm like using people of color as props in the background to help me on my mission for revenge, like shit like that. It just, I wish there was more accurate portrayal and like media surrounding women of color getting their revenge, or women of color being angry and having it be justified and understandable, and women of color being believed when they're like, this thing happened to me, and not getting blamed for whatever terrible thing has happened to them because, oh, you're just such a naturally like feisty, angry, like exotic person, like no wonder people want to assault you. Like it, and it's so insidious, and I hate even, like, it disgusts me to say that, but it's like literally such a thing I've heard over and over and over again. Like narratives in like not only fiction but in real life. Like I've heard people just tell stories, and like the way they talk about like Black women, or the way they talk about like, you know, Latino women, especially women who don't speak English as a first language. It's just so like disgusting. Like it's disturbing. I don't like it, but it's like I hear it all the time, because the thing is, as somebody who's not part of either of those groups, I, for some reason, people feel comfortable enough to like tell me all this stuff, and I'm like, you think that just because I'm like Asian and you're Asian or something, you want to talk like crazy shit about like Black women, and I'm gonna agree with you and laugh and be like, you're right. Like, no, dude, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, let me put it this way, like a lot of Asian people don't seem to understand, we are closer in proximity to other minority groups than we are to whiteness in a lot of ways. Like that's how we're seen by the white people. So why are you acting like, haha, we're gonna have like a little white man chuckle at the expense of like these brown people? It's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, I hate it. So what else did I write? I completely went off not narrative. I completely went off script, and now I'm dying. Yeah, so essentially just women of color have tons of reasons to be livid and full of rage. Like we do. Like it's, and once again, I said this before in my other video, it's like, it's hard to say we, because it's this, I'm in this weird place where like, sometimes I get treated like a man, sometimes I get treated like a woman, sometimes I get treated like neither, and I'm like a disgusting bug alien that needs to be squished. Like, it's hard for me because like on a social level, like, it's like, and I also, like, I'm a non-binary person. Like, I genuinely don't identify with womanhood in a way that maybe I did a few years ago, because I was trying really hard to, like, conform to womanhood because of the fact that I wanted to date butch lesbians. So I was very feminine, and people did treat me very much like an Asian woman. Like, my hair was a little longer, and, like, it was like a whole thing. So, like, it's a surreal experience to have had those experiences where I'm being treated like a woman of color in a very disgusting way, especially in the Pacific Northwest, where it's so common to have, like, you know, Asian women being treated like either, you know, war brides or, you know, trafficking victims. Like, it's a lot. So that happened. But I don't know. It's like I can relate to a lot of the certain experiences of, like, yeah, like, I am definitely being oppressed in a very specific way, and, like, people get surprised because they're like, well, what would you know about being a woman? Like, what would you know about the oppression? Like, you've probably oppressed women before. And I'm like, you don't really know about my entire background, and you don't understand the fact that I didn't always look this way, and, like, I didn't always even have this sort of, it's hard to describe, but have this sort of, like, confidence to speak about things in general, because I used to be scared of everything, and I used to hardly speak, because literally, like, I would just be like, oh, like, I'm an Asian woman, and, like, like, nobody's gonna take me seriously, and, like, all this stuff. And now I'm just like, I don't fucking care. Like, it doesn't, like, what do I care about other people being stupid? Like, whatever. So, and having opinions about me, like, their opinion is none of my business. I'm at the point in life where I'm like, whatever. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard to see, because at a certain point it does become personal. And I guess this is another thing that's probably in the outline, and if it's not in the outline, it's about to be, because I'm going to talk about it. But yeah, we're, you know, women of color. I'm not going to add the asterisks that I've been adding the whole time. You know which women of color I'm talking about specifically. Are never given the complexity and sensitivity that's given to white women. And for women of color, it's less of, like, an aesthetic choice. Like the anger situation. It's like, you know, once again, the leather jacket of it all is given to white women, and it's like an aesthetic, you know, oh, look at me, I've transformed to become a badass. It's like, literally, they're angry, and it's like, yeah, like, embracing your masculine femininity, except not really. You're wearing a full face of makeup, and, like, that's a whole separate thing I could talk about, where when butch lesbians get angry, it's seen as, like, male rage, when it's, like, literally, like, we are not men. Like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, you're crazy. But yeah, I don't know, anger just being seen as an invite to sexual violence is like, why the fuck are we here at this point in society? It really, like, it really makes me want to die. Yeah, exactly. Fantasy is set up in a way to create violent reality, which I talked about before. Where people want to divorce, like, fantasy from reality. And it's like, to a certain extent it is divorce, but at the same time, like, I think it bleeds into reality a lot, especially now with, like, me being an old man, with social media and everybody being accessible every 5 seconds, and everybody having a window into everybody's life. Like, it's a lot. So, rape and sexual assault as a plot device. Women are never, I'm just going to read off this thing now, because we're at 40 minutes, and it's been a lot, and I didn't do any of the fancy editing that keeps people fucking watching the video, so I just gotta wrap it up. It's fine. Women are never treated as people who have experienced something terrible that they have to live with forever. It's always a dramatic, abstract plot device that serves as a catalyst. The event turns the woman into a badass pseudo-man seeking Liam Neeson-style revenge to reclaim her autonomy / like, get back the thing that was lost, which was essentially, like, oh, her virginity, oh, her, like, sexual agency or whatever. Ooh, okay, so it's not just that, but it's, like, literally her value as a woman, her purity. Like, it's the whole Madonna whore complex played out 50 million times on screen, and I have to sit there with my popcorn and go, bitch, why did I pay $13 for this ticket? Like, damn, I didn't need to see this again. And then as an asterisk, I wrote, honestly, being a woman kind of is an experience rife with draconian violence when you live in a misogynistic society, but it shouldn't have to be hinged and defined entirely on that violence. But it's like that thing where, like, violence is so inherent to the experience of minority groups, but at the same time, like, it shouldn't have to be like, your life shouldn't have to be based on those things, you know? Like, it shouldn't be something that consumes you to the point that your whole life is anger, revenge, whatever else. But at the same time, separately, when people are consumed by their own anger and like need for revenge as like minority like groups, whatever the fuck, I keep saying that and I don't know why, because it's hard to have an all-encompassing thing. I don't know, I could say marginalized people, but that sounds so fucking stupid to me. It's fine, whatever. I don't know. I understand how the anger can be all-consuming, and if you really are angry and you need to work through that anger and that's just where you're at in your life, I support you. Like, totally. Especially if you're a woman of color, I support you. Be angry. Be pissed. Burn something down. Like, do it. Like, it's what you need to do in order to be able to function as a person. Like, it's just, that's what I want to do, but I don't, because, I don't know, I'm like a little pussy, so I'm like, oh no, I can't, like, oh, I don't want to be mean. It's like, one day I'm going to snap and I am going to be mean, and that person's going to be eviscerated, and it's going to be like Dr. Faust getting, fucking destroyed by that demon he made a deal with. Like, it's gonna be crazy. But I gotta chill. I want to see, I said this before, but I want to see complex portrayals of female rage with women of color specifically. Like, like, I'm French. Women of color definitely have a lot of things to be angry about, like, for sure. Like, and then this is the part of the video where I talk about my personal experience with female rage or whatever. It's like a whole thing. Non-binary rage. I'm kidding. That is so ugly. I can't believe that just came out of my mouth. If I should be mad at anybody, it should be at my fucking self for being tacky and annoying. It's fine. It's fine. So I have personally experienced so much rage in my life in regards to my own sexual assault and that of friends and family that I feel like I personally have rage problems, which I do. And it's that weird thing where it's like, I wouldn't say it's anger problems, so I immediately get angry out of nowhere, and it's like a whole thing like that I need to work on in therapy. It's more, or like with a specific anger management therapist, it's more like things happen to me and I don't release the rage at the moment because I feel it is not appropriate and it is not the time. But the thing is, I internalize it. And then the thing is, when is the time? Like, when is ever going to be the right time for my rage to be like validated and like understood or whatever? Like, literally, I just have so much anger inside of me because I've like experienced firsthand so much violence, and then I've also seen friends and just like acquaintances and random people on the street, especially women, experience so much violence. I just have so much of it inside of me where I'm just like, I'm ready. Like, I'm ready. Like, I'm literally 5'4". I like have no right to like be this angry and think I can do something about it, but like genuinely, like it puts me through it. Like, even from the start, like being a child and seeing all these news stories of like women being brutalized and disrespected and like treated like garbage, like it really hurts me. And like, it makes complete sense, but like most of these women who I've seen publicly shown as like objects of rage and anger and all this other stuff and like, oh, she deserved it, are mostly Black women. Like, even at the very least, when Beyonce was like going through everything she was going through with Jay-Z, who I hate so much, I'm so sorry, but I hate him, like, for what he did to her. And it was so public, like, just everything that was going on, like, even pre-Lemonade, like, it just, like, I saw it and it made me so upset. Like, so many of her music videos used to literally just be about, like, her experiencing misogyny and not being treated right by men. And it's just like, it did something to me. It made me so like upset. And I was like, I hate this. Like, I don't want this for you. Like, you deserve better. I don't even know you as a person. But I'm like, if you're like this rich, famous, beautiful woman, then what's happening to the rest of the regular women who are just living their day-to-day lives? They're probably experiencing that times 10. Like, it's horrible. So that makes me really angry. Yeah, I'm used to policing negative emotions, and just in general, like, emotions are neutral, like, the actions, why did I write it like this? So, emotions are neutral, and it's just the actions that are created by those emotions that can be good or bad. Like, literally, anger is not inherently bad. Like, if you feel your anger and you go through it, like, it's literally just something you feel. Like, it's not terrible. It's not something that should be sexualized or, like, treated like anything horrible. Once again, like, it's just how it is. Like, you just feel things and you have to feel your feelings, like, whatever. Yeah, okay, I'm making a separate video about rage and the treatment of Asian women in media and how it's affected me in real life. Like, yeah, I am making that video at some point. I got through this one at least. Like, I was worried I wouldn't, because honestly, like, all of this makes me very angry, funny enough. Like, ironically, it makes me Like, I think about it sometimes, and it's so random, but it's like I'll be sitting at home and I just remember the Rihanna thing and the way she was treated. Like, this is so, like, petty, but that's why I don't have Snapchat, because Snapchat decided to make this advertisement on their little app that said, would you rather, like, punch Chris Brown or slap Rihanna? And I, like, lost my shit about it, because the thing is, she even posted on her Instagram stories like, hey, so, like, that was absolutely fucking disgusting, take the ad down and never comment on me again, because that's not funny. And, like, I can't, that's so stupid. It's, like, so petty, but it's like I can't be on Snapchat because they posted that. I think that's fucking disgusting. Like, just not funny. So I think that's it for this video. Personal news, I think I am going to Vancouver. I really kind of don't want to after my experience in Toronto. I did talk to my foster mom about what happened just in general with all the harassment, and, like, she genuinely doesn't want me to go and is afraid I'm actually going to get killed or beat up at this convention, which sounds really dramatic, but, like, honestly, like, with the way that people are in general, like, I would not be surprised if that occurred because somebody decided they didn't like my comics because they're homophobic. So we'll see how it goes. I think I'm just gonna go and I'm gonna sit there and I'm gonna be like, hi, thanks for stopping by, whatever, and then, like, sell some of my comics if I can, and then come home and then deal with the rest of my life, because I am in the middle of moving and it's like a whole debacle. It's like a whole situation. But I don't know. All this to say, I wish that there was a safer world for Black women, particularly, but also just women of color in general. And, like, just, if you're angry because of everything that's been done to you on a day-to-day basis, if you need to stay pissed, fucking stay pissed, and don't worry about trying to, like, not be a stereotype. Because the thing is, like, once again, like, what if you are just, like, you're just, like, a loud, like, emotional person, and that's just who you are, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, and then people are sitting there trying to, like, shit on you for being a stereotype of whatever you are. It's like, what, like, nobody tries to be a stereotype. Sometimes you just are who you are, and it just happens to align with this shitty idea of you that people came up with. Like, it's literally not your fault. And, like, just know that, like, if you're a woman of color and you're fucking angry because something disgusting happened to you, like, I support you, I believe you, like, I'm sorry that happened to you, like, it's horrible. Like, that's just, like, you gotta just keep believing yourself. That sounds so stupid. Naruto, fucking believe it. But, like, I'm so serious. Like, if nobody else believes you, I do. Like, if nobody else believes you, you should. Because the thing is, what you went through was, like, completely, like, real and understandable. Like, I just hate, I don't know, I hate this. I hate the sexualization of, like, anger in women of color. It really freaks me out. It makes me so mad. And the fact that, I don't know, white women are out here running around blowing up fucking trucks and fucking baseball sliding all over the fucking place in New York City in the movies, and it's seen as badass and cool. But then the second you have a woman of color in there, it's like, oh, you're being so violent and, like, reactive. Like, just because you got raped doesn't mean you're special. Like, you need to shit the fuck up. Like, literally, like, like, it's disgusting. It makes me really angry. But I think that's it for the video before I start getting on another thing and screaming, as per usual. All right, well, hopefully this convention goes well and I don't literally get killed in Canada, and if I do, then I guess that's just what I expected. All right, I'll talk to you later. Bye.